Greetings once again, James Hackley, author of the best-selling book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, The Awakening, and welcome to yet another Body, Mind, and Spirit Bible study series. As you guys have been following me know that over the past couple of months, we've been looking at a lot of the miracles of Christ. And today, one of the minor miracles we're going to explore, a miracle that doesn't receive a lot of press because the story's not all that long and the miracle's not all that ziggity wow, but nevertheless, it's very profound. And I'm sure that once we roll up our sleeves and once we get into this, you're going to hopefully get some new revelation in your own life. And that is the miracle about Peter finding the coin, the shekel coin in the mouth of a fish after instructed by Jesus to do so. That story comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 17, verses 24 through 27. And as we do, I will read the entire passage, 24 through 24 through 27 in Matthew 17, and then we'll break it down scripture by scripture, and also post it under the information field so you can read it as you're listening to the commentary as well. So Matthew 17, verse 24 reads as follows: And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your master pay tribute? He said, Yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom and tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Verse 26, Peter said unto him, Of strangers. Jesus said unto him, Then are the children free. Verse 27, Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast an hook, and take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find the pieces of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee. So once again, a little backdrop here is they have to pay customs or tribute. Now this was a temple tax. This was not the Roman tax. Moses had basically instilled a tax, if you will, to the kids of Israel, that children of Israel, that they would upkeep the temple, upkeep the whole ministries, so to speak. So in true fashion, Hebrew fashion, they would go and they would collect a half shekel. Each man had to pay a half shekel. That was their temple tax. As I said, it's very important to remember, this was not a Roman tax levied to the Hebrews. This was a tax that was paid by from the Jewish structure, if you will, for the upkeep of the temple. So verse 24, Jesus had just done a couple of different miracles. So, and when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your master pay tribute? So once again, they didn't approach Jesus directly. They went to Peter. Peter could have been viewed as Jesus' right-hand man, could have been viewed as his armor bearer, but the folks did not approach Jesus directly. They approached Peter. And in verse 25, Peter's quick response is, he said, Yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? So let's break this down. Now, Peter answered when the folks asked him, Do you and your master pay tribute or custom? Peter said yes. Now, we know the history of Peter. He was often, quick of tongue. He spoke before he really thought about things. And maybe in this situation, he probably did misspeak. And the reason why, we'll find out while Christ is basically reminding him, why did you say that we pay taxes when we really don't, by the orders and by the laws that already existed? Because when Peter attempted to come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? And remember, Peter's name was Peter, given to him by Christ. Cephas was actually the name in Greek, which means rock. Peter's birth given name was Simon. There was a passage when Christ said to him, asked Peter, Who do you think I am? And Peter responded, You are the Christ, Son of the living God. And then he said, Simon Bar-Jonah. So Peter's given name is Simon Bar-Jonah. He was the son of Jonah, or the son of John. So here, Christ calls him by his given name. He says, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Now, be it the temple tax at the time or even Roman tax, it was just understood at the time that royalty was exempt from taxes, and also children of royalty. They didn't have to pay the tax. But anyone else, the servants and other lords and dignitaries, they had to pay this tax. And by definition, Jesus being the King of Kings, Peter should have known that the King of all kings would not have to pay any tax that man imposes. But once again, he was quick of tongue, and he responded that, yes, my master pays taxes. Verse 26, Peter said unto him, when asked by Jesus, basically, do children or do strangers pay taxes? In verse 26, Peter said unto him, of strangers. Jesus said unto him, then are the children free. So it's very interesting. In verse 24, when Peter is approached by a guy collecting temple tax, he says, yes, me and my master, we pay taxes. And then verse 26, a couple of verses later, when Jesus asked him, he said, only strangers should pay taxes. And as I said, Christ is the King of Kings. He should have been exempt from that tax as well. But here, in verse 27, that's where the whole thing is summed up. When Christ responds, notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast an hook, and take up fish that cometh first up. And when thou open up his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto him for me and thee. So this is very, very interesting. So Jesus asks Peter who should pay the tax. Peter says strangers, not children. But Jesus is saying, okay, now that you know that the truth, the proper protocol, we're going to go ahead and pay this tax as well, not to embarrass anyone and not to cause any drama, even though you and I now know that we're exempt from paying this tax because we're called of a higher power. So he says that in order to get the money, he didn't dig into his pocket or the purse that they held for the disciples. He instructed Peter to go to the sea, cast a hook, and take up the first fish that come up. And when thou hast opened up his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give them for me and thee. So Christ instructs Peter, which was a fisherman. That was his vocation. That was how he earned his money. So Christ basically gave this solution to Peter the true way that he would really understand it. Now, Christ could have made money manifest from a rock, or he could have just, dug into his pocket and pulled it out. He could have done that. But when we think about this, the fact that he put that money, or the money was found, that's a better way to put it, the money was found by Peter in the mouth of a fish. That was very telling, because just imagine, as a fisherman, who knows how many thousands of fish that Peter and his brother Andrew had caught over the years. As I said, that was their profession. But I guarantee they had never found a fish with money in his mouth. So Peter, being abundant, he goes down, he knows how to fish, he casts his hook. And the first fish, Jesus didn't tell him the 12th fish or the 100th fish. He had mercy and grace he showed to Peter. The first fish that you catch, open up your mouth and you will find a piece of money. And that money was just enough to pay the temple tax. As I said at the onset, it was a half a shekel. That was the mandate, a half a shekel for each man. The coin that they pulled out was a full shekel. So that half shekel, basically, at one coin, paid the tax for both Peter and for Christ as well. But once we really roll up our sleeves and get into this, the question of why did Christ ask Peter to go cast his hook, or instruct him to go cast his hook, that tells us a lot of things. That tells us that we, each and every one of us, we have various ways, various talents and various gifts inside of us to make money. We're only poor, and especially in the United States, we're poor through choice. We lack because we choose to lack. It may sound harsh. It may sound like I'm condemning folks. It may sound judgmental to some. But when we look at, we're in a world of abundance that we have in the United States, and also, especially if we're followers of Christ, we are only poor if we lack, because Christ has not given us the spirit of fear to make things happen. We can read the word. We can just decode all the things that we need to do in order to generate finances. But more than that, each of us are given various gifts and talents. Let's say you work at an office. That's your 9-to-5 gig. But nevertheless, you have great culinary skills. And how many times have people told you that maybe you should start catering on the side? Or maybe you like to fiddle. You have great gifts when it comes to hands and putting things together. Maybe you can do a handyman job or something on the side, or even if you're a mechanic, you can do a mechanic job. Or maybe you're a good writer. Perhaps you can write your own book and get the revenue from that. Or if you're a good speaker, you can be paid for your speaking engagements and things of that nature. Or if you're a design person, I recently launched Bespoke Not Broke. Look for that on the web. It's a men's fashion shop as well. So if you have style, gifts, whatever your gifts are, we can put those gifts in action in order to generate money, not just to pay the taxes that are levied upon us by IRS or our various municipal governments. God has given us those gifts and those talents that we can generate all the revenue we need, basically, to do things that are within his will. So that is, to me, that's the jewel in this miracle. It's not a big deal to a lot of folks that here's a fish with a coin in his mouth. Some people can imagine a catfish, and catfish being bottom feeders, that they would go and they're eating things and they'll just suck up a coin. But then if you look deeper, how did Jesus know that this coin was in this fish's mouth and that this fish basically could be caught by Peter? Christ, and the omnipotence of all, he knows everything. Not only did he know, it's kind of interesting as well, when the tax collector had approached Peter, it doesn't tell us that Christ was there in the midst of that conversation. But as soon as Peter walked in the door, Christ begins to ask him about the taxes. So that just shows the omnipotence and the omniscience of Christ. And even the coin in the fish's mouth. I don't believe that Christ put the coin in the fish's mouth per se. I believe that the fish, being a fish, his normal doings, had his coin in his mouth, and Christ knew that. So he told Peter basically that first fish that you catch, that will be the fish that we need to pay all of our debts. And remember, it wasn't a fish that had 2 shekels or coin increments larger than what they needed. That fish provided just what they needed to pay the taxes. So next time you're fearful of exercising the gifts that God has given you, I encourage you to remember this miracle, because God has already put everything in motion that you need. If you've been praying for financial breakthrough, but yet have not to step in faith and work in obedience to exercise those gifts that God has given you, then that right there is a challenge. You know, one of the cool things about Body, Mind, and Spirit, the Awakening, every single month I receive payments from Amazon and Barnes & Noble for the electronic books that are selling around the world. And also Amazon from some of the paperback copies that are selling. So I'm always getting paid. I wrote one book, and I'm always getting paid on that book. And with Bespoke Not Broke jumping off, I will be getting eBay payments, credit card payments as well for the merchandise that I'm selling online. So God gave me all of those gifts, and I learned a couple of years back to be obedient to all the gifts that he's given me and not to be fearful. So I put those things in motion, and I'm here to tell you that they are indeed yielding financial dividends for me personally, for me and my family. But bigger than that, it's allowing me to interact with people that I wouldn't ordinarily interact with Bespoke Not Broke, the fashion world. I'm interacting with folks around the world. And anytime I meet someone, if you talk to me long enough, you're going to hear me spread the gospel. I'm going to talk about the good news as well. So once again, thank you for your time. And remember this miracle about the fish and the coin in his mouth. And remember that God has everything that you need. It's already out there, but it's up to you to go out and cast your hook and begin catching the fish that God has planned just for you. I encourage you to visit my website, www.jameshackley.com. Make sure you get a copy of this life-changing book, Body, Mind, and Spirit, The Awakening, and also Bespoke Not Broke. Go check us out, Bespoke, Bespoke, notbroke.com. Check us out. If there's a man in your life, point him to that site as well. But as always, please leave your comments here or send me an email to info@jameshackley.com. Let me know the types of Bible study series, subjects that you want to discuss, and we'll be sure to make that happen. Until next time, God bless.